Hi, my name is Marcia Adkins, and this is my PowerPoint presentation on judicial activism and constructivism. Should a judge interpret strictly by its wording or by its intent? We'll start out first by its wording. This approach emphasizes the importance of upholding the original meaning of the law and respecting the intent of the lawmakers. It provides stability and predictability in the legal system, as decisions are based on the literal interpretation of the law. Interpreting strictly by the wording means that judges focus solely on the language used in the law and apply it as written. Next, we will talk about by its intent. Interpreting by intent involves looking beyond the specific wording of the law and considering the purpose and goals behind it. It allows for flexibility and adaptation to changing societal needs and values. This approach recognizes that laws are often drafted with a particular intention in mind and seeks to understand and apply that intention. In reality, judges often employ a combination of both approaches, depending on the circumstances and specific case at hand. They may consider the wording of the law as a starting point, but also take into account the legislative history, the context in which the law was enacted, and the overall purpose it seeks to achieve. The choice between strict interpretation and intent-based interpretation is a matter of judicial philosophy and can vary among judges. The debate between strict interpretation and intent-based interpretation reflects the ongoing conversation about the role of judges in shaping the legal landscape. The goal is to interpret the law in a way that is fair, consistent, and upholds the principles of justice and the rule of law. Should they make law? In reference to judges. One option is to interpret the law in a way that aligns with their own beliefs or values, which can lead to setting a legal precedent through their decisions. Another option is to leave questions regarding the law in the hands of the legislator, who has the power to make or change laws. In reference to option 1, this can be seen as making law from the bench because it shapes the interpretation and application of the law. Judges who take this approach may believe that they have a duty to fill in gaps or correct perceived injustices in the law through their decisions. Another option, like I said before, is to leave questions regarding the law in the hands of the legislator. And in reference to that, some judges believe that questions regarding the law should be left to the legislator. They see their role as strictly interpreting and applying the law as it is written without making significant changes or setting new precedents. Setting a legal precedent means that a judge's decision in a particular case becomes a guiding principle for future cases with similar legal issues. Like I said before, option 1, making law from the bench. Judge interprets law based on their own beliefs or values, sets legal precedent through their decisions, seeks to fill gaps or correct perceived injustices in the law. Option 2, leaving questions to the legislator. Judge strictly interprets and applies the law as written, does not make significant changes or set new precedents, believes the legislator should address any issues or concerns with the law. It's important to note that the approach taken by judges can vary, and there are different philosophies and perspectives on the role of judges in shaping the law. This debate reflects on ongoing conversation about the separation of powers and the balance between judiciary and the legislature in our legal system. Pros and cons of judicial activism and constructivism. First, I'll explain what each of them are before we go through the pros and cons. So, judicial activism, this approach involves judges interpreting and applying the law in a way that addresses perceived social injustice and promotes progress. Constructivism, this approach emphasizes a strict interpretation of the Constitution and laws, relying on the original intent of the framers. Now I have 3 pros for judicial activism. One will be promotes social progress and justice by adapting the law to changing circumstances. Second will be allows judges to correct perceived injustices and protect individual rights. And the third can fill gaps in legislation when the legislator is slow or unwilling to act. I also have 3 cons. First is it can lead to an overreach of judicial power, potentially infringing on the role of legislator. Second, critics argue that judges are not elected and should not have the authority to make laws. The third is may create uncertainty and inconsistency in the interpretation and application of the law. And just like I had 3 pros for the first one, I also have 3 pros for constructivism. The first one is upholds the separation of powers by allowing the legislator to make laws. Second is it provides stability and predictability in the interpretation and application of the law. And the third respects the principle of democratic representation by deferring to elected officials. And just like before, I've got 3 cons to go with those 3 pros. First one is it may result in laws that are outdated or fail to address emerging societal issues. Critics argue that strict interpretation can lead to injustices and perpetuate inequalities. Limits the ability of judges to correct perceived flaws or gaps in legislation. My works cited page. And my design statement. For the paper and the PowerPoint presentation, I reviewed chapters 3, 8, 9, and 10 from our text, Ethical Dilemma, Decisions in Criminal Justice. I also reviewed the web resources you provided, Ethical Misconduct in the Court, and Judicial Activism and Judicial Restraint. I also made sure that I understood the key topics that you gave us for the week, and I defined them and wrote down some notes. The words provided below. After doing some extra research beyond what was provided, I took down notes that were relevant to the questions asked of us for this assignment for the paper as well as for the PowerPoint. I implemented them into my paper and my PowerPoint presentation, used Microsoft Word to write my paper, and took key points from that to design my PowerPoint presentation.